Good morning, world. Good morning, world. I hope you're having a great summer or great winter, depending on where you are in the world. Ooh, it's sizzling hot right here in the US. And I want to welcome you to Personal Lifestyle Determinants of Health. And today's topic, it's a huge one. So I'm going to have to do this in two parts. Micro-aggression habits mindfulness. This one is a big one. And I know, uh, it's always framed around race, gender, and those are or ethnicity, and those are really the three areas sometimes that we hear about microaggression. But actually, it covers um, a lot of it appears in a lot of areas. It's a People do it on the basis of class. People do it on the basis of nationality. If they come from a developed country and you come from what they consider an emerging market or underdeveloped country, um, you know, uh, there is an issue there. I basically just think that microaggression is about status. If you feel like you're from a superior status, then you have a superiority complex. If you feel like you're from somebody else is from an inferior status, then they have an inferiority status, and so or complex. And so at the end of the day, it's just people interacting and engaging on the basis of inequality. But to tell you the honest truth, it really just tries to make the person who is um, perpetrating the microaggression try to make them feel better than the other person. The other second issue that I've discovered as I have gotten older is microaggressions are very common. Everybody does it. Most people, I would say, do it and they're not even conscious that they are doing it. Yet, um, we only think that they're incidental because, oh, it happened in a boardroom session to a woman, or it happened um, on a racial uh, interaction, because people come from different races or different ethnicity. But people are doing it all the time, and they don't have to be from different races. They don't even have to be from different uh, classes. They would have just made an impression about you, or they have bought into the narratives that the media perpetrate, that society or their culture perpetrates about the other. So at the end of the day, people need to be mindful of their own microaggressions, because um, these are constructs of whether you feel superior because you're in an upper class, or whether you feel inferior and somebody else. And usually it's the people who feel the superiority that believe that they are better than the other. So at the end of the day, they behave in ways that are microaggressive to the other. And so one of the things that I really want to get into is how it has actually become more prevalent in society. Because if you are a microaggressor or don't know that you are, but you're seeking to do corrective remedies, you need to look at how do you perceive. I am originally from Zimbabwe, which is Africa, right? And people have had over the years bombarded by all these images of Africa starving, dirty, people struggling, people poor, and they just assume everybody is poor. And yet, you know what? Africa has some of the most wealthy um, classes in the world. They've they're very rich and they're wealthy. And not only that, just wealthy in material economic sense, but they also have wealth in terms of their culture. So you can't assume that you're meeting someone from um, Zimbabwe, um, and they're coming and they're an empty vessel and they don't have these any experiences. So your experiences are more superior. So you need to educate them or you need to teach them. And I remember when I was younger, I was very sarcastic and facetious. And I remember one time I was living in a residence with all these international people, and to tell you the truth, somebody from Connecticut was also getting culture shock in New York, as somebody from Honduras, and me from Zimbabwe, and somebody else from Germany. And I remember this young lady saying to me, "Well, Tendai, um, Africa is so underdeveloped and so poor. How did you um, afford to come to America?" I said, "And you know what? Well, my family, they plowed the field, they saved so much money, and from our tree house, we had a rope. So when British Airways come to pick us up, they are, come and they're levitating like a helicopter, and and then I swing from our tree house, and the British Airways open the door, and I jump in, and they fly me to London, and I get to New York from there." It was such a ridiculous proposition that they saw how ridiculous that they were by asking me that question. That, for God's sake, I might be in Africa, but we've got airports, we've got runways, international planes are landing, and they're making good business because people travel as well. So I would do those kind of things, and then I got to a stage where I would try to educate, and say, "Listen, you have your culture. I'm curious and interested to learn about your culture. We have our culture, and there is a lot of value." And when we started having these conversations, um, we realized that we are so similar in so many ways, and it broke down these perceptions that would feel to me like they were microaggressions, that I'm being treated like I am less than, or I am from an inferior status, because all these images about Africa. And I mean, they still do it. The reporters, one day I was watching BBC, and this guy from Hard Talk, that reporter, he goes to the ghetto of Harare. And he's saying, "Well, this is Zimbabwe," and da, da, da. And yet I know he's probably going to have and mingle and mix at Sem Levy village, which is one of the posh um, um, areas, shopping areas um, in Harare, and he's probably staying at the Mikkels Hotel, which is a five-star hotel right opposite the cities, right opposite our Jacaranda Park, Harare Square, and he's having all the amenities like he would have when he is in London. Yet he goes and picks the most um, dilapidated area of Harare to showcase that and make it representative of um, of Zimbabwe. And what these kind of behaviors, and that's why I call them microaggressions of superiority versus inferiority status. And what these microaggressions is, they perpetuate the images and impressions that other people have about my country. And yet I come from there, and I don't even live in those areas. Yes, they exist, like every place in the world has got a ghetto. We have our ghettos here in the US. They've got their brickstones and other ghettos in London. Everybody has got a ghetto somewhere where poor people or people who are marginalized um, leave because they can't afford elsewhere. They don't have the economic means, but it's not doesn't mean that they are less. they still live with dignity and self-respect and self-love. But what happens with microaggression is, and I want to talk about how actually they manifest in part one. It's like, uh, the mansplaining, that was the word, the blackballing, the gaslighting, all these are forms of microaggressions, throwing you under the bus in a professional setting, putting spanners in your progress, when they see that you're doing better, or you're excelling, or you are, you know, being exemplary. One of the microaggression I have to talk about, and I'll reiterate in part two, is the one what I call accent translation, or um, diction translation. Where somebody I say, oh, I'm saying something, and somebody says, oh, if I say potato, and they're like, oh, you mean potato? Well, if you understood that I'm talking about a potato, you don't have to correct my pronunciation or my accent. And or the other one where you are in a meeting and you're having you are trying to explain a point, and what they'll do is they'll be like, oh, you spoke fluent English by all standards. And they'll be like, well, what Tendai is trying to say is, well, if you understood what I said, why don't you either add to the point or bring your own perspective? And usually, people who try to translate what I'm trying to say are people who never bring good ideas or good points to the table. But because they feel superior, they have to articulate it for for everyone else on the table. Well, I don't need anyone articulating what I said. The correct way is to say, I didn't understand what you said. Maybe because you didn't understand the diction I used, or the my pronunciation, or really you didn't understand the common sense of what I'm trying to say, or the context of what I say. It's easier to say, I didn't understand what you say. Can you repeat yourself? Or can you reiterate? Instead of explaining, in a patronizing, condescending, that what I'm trying to say is, as if everybody else around the table is a buffoon. Always seek to ask, I didn't understand. Can you repeat yourself? Do not translate someone's accent in pronunciation. And really, one of those translations, I always realize accent is not about what's verbally being said, it's really about auditory, how you are hearing. I do hear American accents, but I try to think of what is the person saying in the full context of what they're talking about. And today I'll leave this here, and I will talk about more microaggression habits mindfulness, um, to you, because I didn't even address the consequences to health and all the things that come with it, and the solutions. So I want to say, you need to understand that the best solutions to health come from within. If nobody told you they love you today, I do. And brighten the corner where you are. Ciao, ciao.